We left off on Samach Dal on the base. $64 big. The Gemara explained that the argument for a mayor, the Rabbi Yossi, is when a person speaks, does he speak in an ambiguous manner, although later you could have complications because of this? Rabbi Meir says a person does. Persons make statements which are not specific, although it will create a complication later. People speak this way. Rabbi Yossi says no. When people speak, they speak very clear and very distinct, because a person understands if he's in certain situations, if he speaks in an ambiguous manner, his life will really be complicated, as we have here. Hagdola. Hagdola could mean one or two things, either the eldest or older. So Rabbi Yosef says, if a person says within this context, the marriage, when he said Hagdola, he definitely meant eldest. Because a person will not allow himself to enter into a situation where it will be in question what it is and what it was. Therefore, when he says that, he definitely means eldest. He doesn't mean older. Rameir says no. As people, when they normally would say older, not in this context. They speak ambiguously. So now within marriage, he speaks similarly. So we're not sure what he meant. He himself doesn't remember what he meant. Which one? The older, what is the oldest or the older? He doesn't remember. Okay. We're speaking about the same region. We'll see. Because no, the Gemara is going to ask a question. The Gemara is going to speak regarding a discussion which has significance and has ramifications. Right. No, the Gemara is going to speak about a neder. The Gemara is going to ask a stira, where somebody makes a neder. So Gemara says, we find to the contrary. The Rameir says a person is very careful and very exacting when he speaks, and Yossi is the other way. Ditnan hanoder ara pesach. Person makes a neder, he's not going to benefit from something, and the terminology uses until Pesach, Ara Pesach. Also, Achi Agia. So the meaning of Ara Pesach means it's off limits to him because of a neder until Pesach arrives. Once Pesach comes, the neder is no longer applicable because he said Ara Pesach. That's Achi Agia Pesach. What did he say? If he said Achi Yeheya Pesach, until Pesach will be. What does will be? Also Achi Yetzei. Then it's off limits because then until Pesach passes, until Pesach will be. Will be means, because normally a person would say until. Will be, saying it will be means until it will end. What about if he uses the term ad pnei Pesach? Okay, so pnei means until we face Pesach. Pnei. Now this is a question, because every day of Pesach is called Pesach. Every day of the Yom Tov is Yom Tov. So every day is before the next day. So every day is facing the next day. Rabbi Omer Osa Achi Agia. Apnei Pesach means the first day. When you come to the first day, it means the first day. You approach the Yom Tov, Ad Pnei. Pnei means the face. You're facing Pesach. That's Achi Agia. Rabbi Yosem Achi Yetzei. It means until Pesach is over. Why? Because Pesach, Pnei means, because until you come to the last day, every day of Pesach is a day of Pesach. So every day, you're facing the next day. So since so we see the neder, he's bound to the more strict interpretation of Pnei, not to mean when you're facing the Yom Tov, but rather you're facing every day of the Yom Tov. So we see that a person does enter into a situation where, although it could be interpreted one or two ways, we interpret it in the more strict way because of the ambiguity of the statement. But it's a contradiction, right? It's a stira. Rab Chanina bar Avdimi, Rav. So Rab Chanina bar Avdimi says, you have to invert it. That Reb Yossi says, when he says Pnei means until, because he's very exacting in his language. And Rebeir says no, it's till the end of Pesach. You invert it. It's Mersa Vatanya, but we learned Vatanya to prove this point. Zaklal, Kol shezmano kavua. If you have a set amount of days, right? Pesach is a 7-day Yom Tov. It's a set amount of days. Voma ad pinei. And you said, when I face Pesach, Rabbeinu b'achi yetzei. It's clear. Normally Hatanya means it's a question. Here Hatanya means to prove it. As we learned in the Brisa, so Rameir says, you're bound by the net until Pesach passes. So how is he interpreting Pinei? Not when you're facing the beginning of the holiday, but rather the Yom Tiv, but rather until the day it's over. Rabbi Yosef b'achi yagia. Rabbi Yosef says, no, Pinei means when you approach Pesach, the beginning of Pesach. So again, this is consistent with Rabbi Yossi, that a person doesn't allow himself to enter into a situation of, because of its ambiguity, where it'll complicate his life. He's very specific. Okay? No. Yeah. The way it was stated, it's a Mishnah. The way it was stated, it wasn't stated correctly, and we're proving it from the Brisa, because we see in the Brisa the positions are stated as we invert it, as we say now. Okay? It's interesting. Just simple. Normally, a Brisa doesn't have the standing of a Mishnah. Right? Doesn't have the standing. We're quoting a Mishnah in the Dorim regarding the Dorim. And it seems to be the Mishnah says what? That Rameir Hole is of the opinion when you speak very distinctly. And Reb Yossi is the one who says, no, what the full range of the meaning of that word you have to deal with, because the person doesn't enter it, is not that careful, and therefore whatever that statement could mean, we have to deal with the full meaning of that statement. Wait, it says, and I'll prove it from a Brisa. We didn't prove it from a Brisa. We have a Mishnah. Mm-hmm. The Mishnah says differently in the Brisa. No, we're showing. It's not as strong. It's not as strong. Maybe the other way. We should invert the Brisa because of the Mishnah. We're inverting the Mishnah because of the Brisa. The answer is because we have a Mishnah. We have another Mishnah. That's the answer, because we have a Mishnah by kiddushin. Right? When he says Hagdola, Rabbi Yossi says only the oldest of all of them. Oh, Hagdola means the oldest. We have a contradiction in the Mishnah. Two Mishnayos. That's how we started. So we said, no, you have to invert it. To prove it, because we have a Brisa. So we're not pitting the Brisa against the Mishnah. No, then of course we'd invert the Brisa because of the Mishnah. It's not, they just need a get. It's not a blemish. Okay? So that's what David asked before. No. Not always. First, you can't always. It depends how you make the netter. The Gemara says if you make a net al das rabim, cannot be undone. That means you have to have, I'm making a netter, and the only way it can be annulled if all Jews in the world are agreeable, it should be annulled. But there are various situations. Okay, but the Gemara doesn't. I would have said something else. When you're complicating your children, it's your children also. You're complicating your children's lives. Over every one of your daughters now is in a situation, right, where we don't know who the wife was, right? Okay, but the Gemara evidently saying that we're dealing. If it's a doraisa, that's sufficient. People are just not careful when they speak, right? That's the question. Are you careful when you speak? Or you're not careful. Okay. The question is the average person. They're arguing, what is the average person? You know what I would say? No, this is what I would say. That when he said Hagdola, right? People, when they speak, it's like the Gemara says in the Dorim, if a person makes a statement, so the statement doesn't mean one thing, doesn't mean something else. So they ask the person, what did you mean? He says, I meant whatever it means. He wasn't thinking what it meant. Whatever it meant, that's what I meant. Now we have a question, what does that mean? So I'm saying when a person says Hagdola, he meant somebody. He did mean somebody. When he made that statement, I married the Gedola, right? Because of course he thought of he knew which daughter. I'm just responding to what David's saying. Because it's not a person says, I'm marrying my Hagdola to you. He didn't say that. At the thing he says, I married the Gedola. He doesn't now remember what the Gedola was. Right? He doesn't remember. Was the Gedola the eldest or the older? But when originally he said it, the Gedola, he knew what Hagdola meant. So we say, so a person doesn't make that kind of statement where if a question should arise and he's not able to understand what he meant, that complicates his life. But so it's not when he said it initially. There was he knew what he meant. He knew exactly what he meant. Either eldest or elder. Whatever that was. No, today he doesn't know. You understand? Of course, a person is not going to act irresponsibly when he makes a statement initially, where he's going to complicate all his children's lives. Right? The person does something, knows what he's doing. It's only something which may arise later, where because there's an ambiguity, he won't know what he meant. But originally, of course, he knew what he meant. So we're saying a person takes that into account. He takes the eventuality of a possibility, which is usually not the case. To what degree is a person careful? So if that's the case, there's no differentiation. Understand what I'm saying?
When he married about the daughter, he said Hagdola. He had a name. He associated Hagdola with the...
But he doesn't remember. He doesn't remember what he meant. He doesn't remember what that meant.
How much longer?
Kasha v'maisa. Those days a person will marry off a child when she's 8 years old.
Right.
And now, but they don't get together until 10 years later. He doesn't recall. Well, what happens if you had witnesses there, and they say, remember he said Hagdola, we're not sure what he meant. Did he mean this or did he mean that? So it's a machlok from Emor Rabbi Yossi. And that will determine how many of the daughters have to receive a get. Is it a suffix or is it not a suffix? Not now. Now there's no complication. If the question should arise, so does he think about that now, about the eventuality? Again, wait a second. Let me explain you something again. A person says Atnei Pesach. If he evidently, it could mean one or the other. No. Let me explain you something. The Gemara says that when we speak with Durham, it's Holchem Acher. We go after the way people speak in the vernacular. No. The Gemara very often says, you go Achel Loshem B'nei Odom. Neder is Achel Loshem B'nei Odom. Because the Gemara says, but in the Torah, this word means something else. The Gemara says it's irrelevant what it means in the Torah. Neder is based on the way people speak. If when people say this is what they mean, that's how the neder takes effect. Correct? The way you speak. So we're speaking over here. When he said Apnei Pesach, he knew what Apnei Pesach meant. He knew what it meant. So if he says, when I said Apnei Pesach, he says, I meant before Pesach starts. There's no complication. And if he says, I meant till after Pesach, again, there's no complication. He doesn't remember what he meant when he said Apnei Pesach. Otherwise, it has no relevance to it. But I'm no. Again, when people but that's the question. If you say Mochas Nishnaf Shelisveiko, then Pnei Pesach can mean one or the other, and he could tell you what he meant. If it's open to both interpretations, that's not Dvam Shebelev. That's not based on what I had in mind, because the word can mean either one or the other. Right? That's not Dvam Shebelev. Dvarim Shalev is it means one thing, and I said when I said that I meant something else. Then it's irrelevant what you thought. You deal with what the face value of the word is, the statement.
Can he go to Matanez saying, I really, if I would have known that this
Sure, he could.
on that basis,
He would say, if I would have known this and that, I wouldn't have made the netter. Okay, of course he could. But then the netter never ever began. Right? Here we're saying the netter is in effect up to a point. Up to what point? Before Pesach or through Pesach? That's our discussion here. Well, the Gemara is going to conclude. If people, everybody, when they speak to Pnei Pesach means before, there's not even a question. It's, let's say people would speak in Hebrew. Everybody would say Hagdolah means the eldest. If that's the way people would speak, there's never a question, even if he doesn't remember. The word, definitely, there's no question, no suffix. But since there's this ambiguity, it could mean one or the other, he says, I don't remember what I meant. Did I mean the eldest? Did I mean the older? Well, that's the argument. No, but the basis why Rabbi Yosef says he definitely meant one, not the other, is because a person would mean something specific, otherwise it becomes very complicated later. We will like Rabbi Yosef. We'll see. We'll see. When you say a person has a face, where's your face? Your face is in the outer part of your body and in the part of your body. Okay, no discussion. It means on the face of the water. Face value. Okay? Okay, you better weigh it. Okay, Samara says, Omer Abayi. Now he says something very interesting. Omer Abayi machlok b'shtei kitos. Avabkata achas divrei kol gedol mamush. He says this whole discussion of Hagdolah, does it mean the eldest or the elder, is only discussion in the context of the Mishnah where the person had two groups of daughters. He had daughters from the first wife and the second wife. So we have the question, what does older mean? What does Hagdolah mean? Is it the eldest of all of them? Or the first group, they're all older than the second group? Or is the eldest of the first group? She's the eldest of the second group. So we don't know. There are multiple people involved. Let's say a person only has one set of daughters. Let's say he has three daughters. He has an older, a younger, and a middle daughter. And he says Hagdolah. What did he mean there? Right? We'll see. There, but he could have. Did he mean the second daughter? Because the second daughter is older than the youngest. We'll see. Bai says there's no argument. Everybody agrees. There it means the eldest. When he only has one group and the three. When Gedola means the eldest, and if you would say Katana of the three, one group, it means the youngest. Why? Because Entzos Bishmo Korilo. Because the middle daughter, he would refer to her by name. Okay? That's the way he would refer. But we have two groups so the first group, they're all older than the second group. Yeah, but he says I'm married. But he factually, when he married off his daughter, both groups existed. And he says I married off my older daughter, Hagdolah. So now we're not sure. We're not sure. His daughter, he didn't say which group. He didn't identify the group.
Within each group, the middle daughter should be.
No. Then you don't understand Abaye. Abaye's not saying what you're saying. The first group versus the second group. When he refers to anybody in the first group, he'll refer to them as Gedolah versus the second group. But if he's only speaking about the second group, or he has one group, then he will identify the middle daughter by her name. So older means eldest, and Katana means youngest. We'll see. The Gemara's going to ask on this.
Actually, you form two groups of the two groups, and then it's the oldest.
If he says, I'm marrying the Gedolah of the eldest group, he says Hagdolah of the first group. Then it's eldest. That's like one group. But he didn't say that. He says, I'm marrying my daughter who's Hagdolah. So he has his daughters which are comprised of two groups. So then we have a question. But if he would say Hagdolah of the first group, that's the way he would explain it. He would express himself. Then it wouldn't be a question, according to what Abaye is saying. Right? Because he definitely means the eldest. Right? Is it clear? Then Abai is wasting his time and our time. Of course he's speaking about Reb Meir. What do you mean Reb Meir wouldn't agree? He's not trying. He's telling you. He's not trying to tell you. He's telling you what Reb Meir is saying. Reb Meir is only arguing in the context of two groups. Otherwise, let's talk about one group. Let's talk about one group. What do we have to speak about two groups? Right? So why does Rabbi Yehuda Nossi present the argument with the two groups? Why not one group? The answer is because if it would only be one group, the whole discussion wouldn't be a discussion. Because you refer to the older as eldest, younger as youngest, the middle one by her name. Okay, that's the rationale. If that's the case, Tishtrik, this is a phenomenal question. We're saying, if he says Hagdola, you're right. All the first group, every one of them is older than the second group, even the middle of the first group. But what about the second group? You have three, right? So the middle one, he's not going to refer to her. That one he always referred to by name. But it says in the Mishnah that everyone needs to get except the youngest of all of them, because she's definitely not older. Okay? So he's asking, and so she got Shnia Tishri. Listen what he says. The second group only has two daughters. You're right. If you would have three daughters, not only would the youngest not need a get, even the middle one would not need a get, because she'd be identified by name. But the second group only has there were only two daughters from the second wife. So all the first daughters all have relevance to Haggadolah. Therefore, they also need a get. But the second group, it's what? The second one, the elder of the second group is older than the younger one. Okay? Vochenam mistavro. And he says it's logical to say what I'm saying. Why? Dim isa diko. Because if there'd be a three in the second group, lisniyo, he should say it. Yeah. We will see, he says, and it's clear from the language of the Mishnah that the second group only has two, the way Rabbi Yehuda Nossi writes the Mishnah. Let's read he says, Hochanam mistabra. And it's logical, it's compelling to say what I'm saying, Abaye says. You hear this? I think Abaye was a person who just spoke without thinking. Okay? Dimiso, because he says, listening, so Rashi says, when it says, we speaks about the second group, it says, who's forbidden? The older and not the younger, right? He says, miso, the Mishnah should say something else. The miso, the emtsois, if the second group has a middle daughter, the kula boy lashmina dasiron, and if you disagree with what I'm saying, that even the middle daughter is forbidden in the second group, you should say, gabi eni odea, the name hoch, this one is eni odea im gedolah shebegedolos im gedolah shebektanos. What did gedolah mean? Does it mean eldest or elder? O emtso shebektanos. What does he say? He says, the Mishnah, when it says, it may be the older of the second group. What wouldn't it may be the older of the second group? You should say, it may be even the second of the emtso shebektanos. Why only the older of the second group? He should speak about the middle of the second group. The answer is, because if you have three in the second group, factually, you'd be able to identify her. So how many are we speaking in the second group? There are only two. There are only two daughters, because there'd be three. And you're not going to differentiate one group or two groups, then even the middle daughter should not be permitted. So why does the Mishnah only say the elder of the second group? It should say all of them except the youngest of the second group. But it doesn't say that. See, so he responds. He doesn't take it lying down. Uletamech and bekat rishona devari sveiko vasirale miktoni. He says, if you tell me, you bring me the proof there were only two daughters in the second group, and because it doesn't say the middle of the second group is not permitted, and only the youngest is permitted, it should say regarding the first group. It should say the first group, and the middle of the first group is not permitted. Right? When it speaks about the first group, it only says afterwards, though, because they're older than the second group. But it does. But it does. He says, let's see it inside. Yeah. 1 second. The Amrit so feel it asus emtzos namikoi have been first emtzos shebekat rishon devari asiro im yeshna shom. He says the first group, if it's there, she definitely would not be permitted. The modem kol kat rishon l'gabi kat shnei gedola korilo basura. We're saying the second group is considered what? Off limits, because they're all older than the second group, right? That's what Mishnah says, because they're all older than the second group. So needs to be ratio came nishmi no da surah salokoi. Well, Tesga died in the Mishri. Well, no, but he says very good. What do we have to say? The reason why they're all not permitted is because they're all older than the second group, right? That's what. Why are all the daughters in the first group not permitted? Because they're all older than the second group. Let's establish it right away. Do you know why they're all forbidden? Before we talk about the youngest of the second group, they're all forbidden because they're all older. They're all older than the youngest, right? That's the reason why it's not. Then you'll say, and not only that, the youngest of the first group is not permitted because she's also older than the second group. So already establishing that even the middle daughter of the first group is forbidden, but it doesn't say that. It starts, is it eldest? Is the whole group not permitted because they're all older than the second group? We should say it like that. Firstly, we should say all of the first group is not permitted except for the youngest because it may be elder, right? They're all older than the younger of the first group, but they all may not be permitted because they're all older than the second group, including the younger of the first group, right? The Mishnah doesn't express itself that way, correct? So evidently, why doesn't it? Evidently, we'll see in a minute. The answer is, 1 second, the chiton kol asuros kishein sham emtzois, right? So it would never even be considered. He says, the middle of the first group, which is definitely not permitted, the Tana doesn't mention it, right? We don't discuss it. The answer is because it's understood she's not permitted. Hachis, he says, what are you talking about? That's not a basis. What he's saying, since the Tana, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi didn't discuss the middle daughters of the first group, the middle daughter, so you see clearly that what? That she would be permitted. He says, what are you talking about? Hochi hashta. Hosem tana dido lisura. Buadin lahach dikshishimino. Hochem isa dika disanyo. He says, the first group, factually, they're all not permitted. Why are they not permitted? They're not permitted because they're all older than the second group. But in the second group, if factually, if the middle one would be permitted, it should say she's permitted. Rashi. Bahilo itzrich lefrushi. Da'ava gav d'masis kulon shein shom elo shtayim chol kat lo teis gedaiten di avishom emtzoos lahavit tono kulon asuros. They came to tono katano didei lisuro. Yeah, the first group was saying even the youngest of the first group is not permitted. So right, so you have to discuss. Tell me the middle of the first group is not permitted. It's another pashut, right? Whether they're 2 or 3, whatever's in the first group. You say, he should have mentioned the middle one. Does that make sense? If the youngest of the first group is not permitted, because they're all older than the second group, do I have to discuss the middle of the first group? If even the younger of the first group is not permitted. Right? But the second group, the chilotona equal the mema, the mastisam shein shamel gdol ketano. But the second group is not simple. It should mention the middle one, right? The first one, Abai is responding. You're saying to me, so why isn't the first group mentioned, the middle one? He says, of course, if the youngest is not permitted, you have to tell me the middle one's not permitted. But the second group, where it's not so simple, the middle one, because of what I'm saying, so the Tana should say the middle one is not permitted. So why doesn't he discuss the middle one? Evidently, clearly we're speaking about the only 2 daughters. Abai is saying, no, in the second group. Abai, you understand how we... how correct Abai is. It's how you learn a Mishnah. The first group, the reason why the Tana doesn't discuss the middle daughter, it's understood there's no need. If the youngest is older, so the middle one's definitely older. But in the second group, we're talking, let's say there are 3 daughters, and there's a question what the status of the second daughter. And if the status is usur, what does he say the middle daughter is also usur? Right? He should say the middle daughter is usur. Right? Wait a second. Evidently, there's no middle daughter because there are only 2. But if there would have been a middle daughter, she'd be permitted. If there'd be a middle, since there are only 2, that's why it's the older and the younger. But if there'd be 3, the middle one would be permitted. Because this is the only case where, otherwise, what is it? Tell me a greater chiddush. Tell me a greater chiddush. Not only when you have 2 daughters, the older mean the older. If you have 3 daughters, even the second daughter is older. The middle daughter is not permitted. Right? So therefore, Abai says clearly, because we're dealing with one group, you will always refer to the middle daughter by name, not by elder or younger. Correct. That's the case. That's what we're talking about.
He defined the case very narrowly.
Very specifically.
So the first group could be in number.
Right, correct.
And the second group has to be 2.
Has to be 2, correct. To be continued.